The blood pooling beneath the orc woman's body was dark enough that Marcus Dawson could see it even in the fading twilight, spreading across the dirt road like spilled wine. Her breathing came in shallow gasps, each one weaker than the last, and the crowd of villagers stood in a wide circle around her fallen form, their faces a mixture of fear and disgust. Marcus had been walking back from his fields when he heard the commotion, his muscles aching from a day spent turning soil and mending fences, and now he stood at the edge of that human wall, staring at the dying woman while his heart hammered against his ribs. "Someone get the healer," a man shouted, his voice cracking with the kind of panic that comes from witnessing something terrible. "She is bleeding out." "That is an orc, Thomas," another voice responded, cold and flat. "Why would we waste Healer Brennan's time on a monster?" Marcus pushed forward slightly, trying to get a better look. The orc woman was young, perhaps in her early 20s, with skin the color of spring leaves and dark hair matted with sweat and dirt. Her leather armor had been torn open on her left side, revealing a deep gash that ran from her ribs down to her hip. The wound was ragged, probably from a blade or maybe an animal attack. Her tusks were small, barely protruding from her lower lip, and her face was twisted in pain. She was trying to speak, her lips moving, but no sound came out except for those awful, rattling breaths. "Please," Thomas tried again. He was a baker, Marcus knew, a soft-hearted man with 3 daughters. "She is dying. We cannot just stand here." "We can, and we will," said Richard Moss, the blacksmith. His arms were crossed over his broad chest, his expression hard as the iron he worked. "You know what the orcs did to the Miller family last spring, burned their farm to ashes. Killed everyone except the youngest boy, and he has not spoken a word since." "That was a war party from the northern clans," Thomas protested. "This girl is alone and she is hurt. Look at her. She is no threat to anyone." "She is an orc," Richard repeated, as if that settled everything. "And I will not have their kind thinking they are welcome in our village. Let her crawl back to whatever hole she came from." Marcus felt something hot and sharp twist in his gut. He had fought in the border wars 5 years ago, had seen what orcs could do when they were angry and armed. He had also seen what humans could do, and sometimes there was not much difference. He had put that life behind him when his father died and left him the farm, had sworn to himself that he would spend the rest of his days growing things instead of destroying them. But standing here, watching this young woman bleed out while people argued about whether her life had value, made him feel like he was back in that mud and chaos, except this time the enemy was indifference. "Where is Healer Brennan?" Marcus asked, his voice loud enough to cut through the murmuring crowd. People turned to look at him, and he felt their eyes like weights. He was not a man who drew attention to himself. He kept to his farm, sold his vegetables at market, and minded his own business. But something about this moment demanded that he step forward. "I am here," came a reedy voice from the back of the crowd. The villagers parted to let Healer Brennan through. He was an old man, thin and stooped, with wispy white hair and hands that trembled slightly. He had been the village healer for as long as Marcus could remember, had set his broken arm when he was 8 and treated his father's fever in the final days. Brennan took one look at the orc woman and shook his head. "I cannot help her." "Cannot or will not," Marcus challenged. Brennan met his eyes, and there was something sad in that gaze, something defeated. "Does it matter? She is an orc. If I treat her and word gets out, the village council will strip me of my position." "I am sorry, Marcus, I truly am, but I have to think of all the people here who depend on me." "So you are going to let her die?" "I am going to do what I must to continue serving this village." Brennan turned away, his shoulders hunched. "Someone should move her off the road before full dark. We do not want to attract scavengers." The crowd began to disperse, their curiosity satisfied, their consciences apparently clear. Thomas lingered for a moment, his face pale, but when his wife called to him from their shop doorway, he too walked away. Soon it was just Marcus and the dying orc woman, alone in the gathering darkness. He crouched down beside her, careful not to kneel in the spreading pool of blood. Up close, he could see that she was shivering despite the warmth of the evening. Her skin had taken on a grayish tinge around her lips, and her eyes, when they fluttered open, were the color of amber. They focused on him with difficulty, and he saw fear in them, along with pain and something else. Resignation, maybe. The knowledge that she was going to die here among strangers who hated her. "Can you understand me?" Marcus asked softly. She managed a slight nod, her breath hitching. "I am going to help you," he said, though he had no idea if that was true. His knowledge of healing came from treating injured livestock and the occasional cut or burn he got working the farm. This was beyond anything he had dealt with before. But he knew that doing nothing would guarantee her death, and he found he could not live with that. He stood and looked around. His farm was about a quarter-mile down the road, close enough that he could carry her if he was careful. The question was whether moving her would make things worse. The gash in her side was still bleeding, though not as heavily as before. That could mean the blood flow was slowing naturally, or it could mean she was running out of blood to lose. "I am going to lift you," he told her. "It is going to hurt. I am sorry." He slid one arm under her shoulders and the other beneath her knees, bracing himself before lifting. She was heavier than he expected, solid muscle under soft skin, and when he straightened with her in his arms, she made a sound that cut through him like a knife. It was a low moan, barely audible, but it carried so much anguish that he almost set her back down. Instead, he forced himself to start walking, moving as smoothly as he could manage. The road to his farm had never seemed so long. Every step sent jolts through his tired legs, and he could feel her blood soaking into his shirt, warm and sticky. She had gone limp in his arms, her head lolling against his shoulder, and he could not tell if she had passed out or if she was dying. He tried to focus on putting one foot in front of the other, on the familiar landmarks that meant he was getting closer. The old oak tree with the split trunk, the boundary stone that marked where his property began, the gate that he had left open this morning. His house was small but well-maintained, a two-room cottage that his grandfather had built. He kicked open the door and carried the orc woman inside, laying her on his bed as gently as he could. She did not stir. Her breathing was so shallow now that he had to watch her chest closely to see it move. Marcus lit every lamp he had, flooding the room with light. He needed to see what he was doing. He pulled off his blood-soaked shirt and tossed it aside, then went to the basin and scrubbed his hands until they were pink and clean. His father had always said that dirty hands led to infection, and infection killed more people than wounds. He grabbed clean cloths from the chest at the foot of the bed, along with the bottle of strong spirits his neighbor had given him last harvest. It was supposed to be for celebrations, but he figured this qualified. He also took out his father's old medical kit, a battered leather bag that contained needles, thread, scissors, and various herbs and salves. He had no idea what most of them did, but he had watched his father use them over the years, had absorbed more than he realized through simple observation. The first priority was stopping the bleeding. Marcus cut away the remains of her leather armor and the torn shirt beneath, exposing the full extent of the wound. It was worse than he had thought. The gash ran diagonally across her torso, deep enough in places that he could see the white gleam of ribs. His stomach lurched, but he swallowed hard and forced himself to stay focused. Panicking would not help her. He soaked a cloth in the spirits and began cleaning the wound, working from the edges inward. The orc woman jerked when the alcohol touched her torn flesh, a spasm that ran through her entire body, and her eyes flew open. She stared up at him, disoriented and terrified, and tried to pull away. "Easy," Marcus said, placing a hand on her shoulder. "I am trying to help. You have to stay still." She did not seem to hear him. Her hand came up, grabbing his wrist with surprising strength, and for a moment he thought she was going to fight him. But then her eyes focused, really seeing him, and she seemed to understand. Her grip loosened, though she did not let go entirely. "It is going to hurt more before it gets better," he warned her. "But I need to clean this out and close it up, or you are going to die. Do you understand?" Another small nod. Her amber eyes were locked on his face, and he could see her gathering herself, preparing for the pain. Marcus worked as quickly as he could, but there was no way to make it gentle. He had to flush out the wound with more spirits, had to probe it with clean fingers to make sure there were no foreign objects lodged inside. The orc woman bit down on her lower lip hard enough to draw blood, her tusks digging into the soft flesh, but she made no sound. Her hand on his wrist tightened until he thought she might break bone, but he did not pull away. When he was satisfied that the wound was as clean as he could make it, he threaded one of the needles with catgut and began to sew. He had stitched up torn clothes before, and once he had sewn a deep cut on his own leg after an accident with an axe. But this was different. The needle had to go deep enough to hold the layers of tissue together, but not so deep that he caused more damage. His hands shook with the effort of being precise. The first stitch made her entire body go rigid. The second drew a whimper from her throat. By the fifth, tears were streaming down her temples into her dark hair. Marcus wanted to stop, wanted to give her a moment to rest, but he knew that if he paused he might not be able to start again. So he kept going, stitch after stitch, closing the gash inch by painful inch. It took him nearly an hour. By the time he tied off the last knot and cut the thread, his hands were cramping and sweat was dripping into his eyes. The orc woman had passed out again somewhere around the halfway point, which was probably a mercy. He sat back on his heels and looked at his work. The stitches were not pretty, and the scar she would have would be terrible, but the wound was closed. Blood no longer seeped from between the threads. He cleaned up as best he could, wiping away the blood that had pooled in the hollow of her hip, then covered the stitches with a thick layer of a salve he hoped was the right one. It smelled of comfrey and something sharp he could not identify. Finally, he wrapped her torso in clean bandages, lifting her slightly to pass the cloth around her back. She was deeply unconscious now, her breathing still shallow but more regular than before. Marcus stood and stumbled to the basin, washing the blood from his hands and arms. His reflection in the small mirror showed a man he barely recognized, eyes wild and face pale. What had he just done? He had defied his entire village, had brought an orc into his home, had spent his evening elbow deep in her blood trying to save her life. If anyone found out, he would be ostracized at best, driven out at worst. But when he looked over at her lying in his bed, small and vulnerable despite her muscular build, he could not bring himself to regret it. She was a person. She deserved a chance to live. He pulled a chair close to the bedside and sat down, suddenly aware of how exhausted he was. The adrenaline that had kept him going was fading, leaving behind a bone-deep weariness. He knew he should stay awake, should watch her in case she took a turn for the worse, but his eyes kept trying to close. Just for a moment, he told himself. Just a brief rest. He woke to sunlight streaming through the window and the sound of ragged breathing that was not his own. Marcus jerked upright, his neck protesting the awkward angle he had slept at, and immediately checked on his patient. The orc woman was still unconscious, but her color looked better. The grayish tinge was gone, replaced by her natural green, and when he placed his hand on her forehead, she felt warm but not feverish. The bandages were spotted with blood, but not soaked through. That was a good sign. He would need to change them soon, check the stitches, make sure infection had not set in. But for now, she was stable. Marcus went outside to use the privy and splash water on his face from the pump. The morning was beautiful, clear and cool, with birds singing in the trees that bordered his property. His chickens clucked and scratched in their pen, annoyed that he had not yet let them out. Life went on, indifferent to the small drama playing out in his cottage. He let the chickens out, scattered feed for them, and checked on his vegetable garden. The tomatoes were coming in nicely, and the beans needed picking. Normal, everyday tasks that felt surreal after the chaos of the previous night. He picked a basket of beans because he needed something to do with his hands, something to ground him. When he went back inside, the orc woman's eyes were open. She was staring at the ceiling, her expression blank, and she did not react when he entered. He set the basket of beans on the table and approached the bed slowly. "You are awake," he said, keeping his voice gentle. "How do you feel?" She turned her head to look at him, and he saw wariness in her gaze, along with confusion and pain. "Where am I?" Her voice was rough, probably from dehydration and screaming silently through the pain. "My home. My name is Marcus Dawson. You were injured in the road outside the village. I brought you here and treated your wound." She processed this, her amber eyes never leaving his face. The healer refused. "Yes, but you did not know." A long silence stretched between them. Finally, she said why it was a fair question, one he had been asking himself. "Because you needed help," Marcus said simply, "and I could not walk away. I am an orc. I noticed." That got a reaction, a slight twitch at the corner of her mouth that might have been the ghost of a smile, but it faded quickly. "Your people will not forgive this. They will punish you for helping me." "Maybe, but that is my problem, not yours." He moved to the basin and filled a cup with water. "You need to drink. You lost a lot of blood." He helped her sit up, supporting her shoulders while she drank. She was weak, her hands trembling as she held the cup, but she managed to get most of the water down. When she was finished, he eased her back down onto the pillows. "What is your name?" he asked. She hesitated, as if debating whether to tell him. "Kira. Just Kira. Orcs do not use family names the way humans do. I am Kira of the Red Stone clan, but that means nothing here. I was cast out." "Why?" Her expression shuddered, closing him out. "That is my business." "Fair enough." Marcus pulled the chair close again and sat down. "Kira, I need to check your stitches and change your bandages. It is going to hurt, but it has to be done. Will you let me?" She studied him for a long moment, and he had the sense that she was weighing him, trying to decide if she could trust him. Finally, she nodded. "Do what you must." He worked carefully, unwrapping the bandages and examining the wound. The area around the stitches was red and slightly swollen, but he did not see any of the telltale signs of infection. The black threads stood out starkly against her green skin, a ragged line of them holding her together. She watched him work, her jaw clenched, but she did not make a sound even when he had to touch the tender flesh. "It looks better than I expected," Marcus said, applying fresh salve. "You are healing well, but you are going to need to stay in bed for at least a week, probably longer. The stitches need time to set, and if you move around too much, you will tear them open." "A week," Kira repeated, and something like panic flashed across her face. "I cannot stay here for a week. You do not have a choice. If you try to leave now, you will die. Either from the wound reopening or from being too weak to defend yourself if you run into trouble." "I am already trouble," she said bitterly. "For you and for myself. The longer I stay, the worse it will be. Let me worry about that." He finished wrapping the fresh bandages and secured them. "Right now, your job is to rest and heal. That is all." She looked like she wanted to argue, but exhaustion won out. Her eyes drifted closed, and within moments her breathing had evened out into sleep. Marcus watched her for a while, then got up and started making breakfast. He was hungry, and he suspected she would be too when she woke again. He made porridge with honey and dried fruit, simple but filling. When it was ready, he ate his portion standing at the window, looking out at his fields. He should be out there working. There was always work to be done on a farm, especially this time of year. But he could not leave Kira alone, not when she was this vulnerable. The days developed a rhythm. Marcus would wake early and tend to the most urgent farm chores, the things that could not wait. He would milk his cow, feed the animals, water the garden. Then he would come back inside and check on Kira, changing her bandages and helping her eat and drink. She slept a lot those first few days, her body using all its energy to heal. When she was awake, they talked. At first, the conversations were brief and superficial, just the exchange of necessary information. But gradually, as she grew stronger and more comfortable with him, they deepened. Kira told him about her clan, about growing up in the borderlands where orc and human territories met. She had been training as a scout, she said, learning to move through the forest unseen and to read the signs that told of danger or opportunity. "What happened?" Marcus asked one evening as he fed her soup. She was able to sit up on her own now, propped against the pillows, but she was still too weak to hold the bowl steady. "I fell in love," Kira said, her voice flat, "with a human." Marcus nearly dropped the spoon. "What?" His name was James. "He was a hunter who worked the woods near our territory. We met by accident one spring and we should have gone our separate ways. But we kept meeting, kept talking, and then—" She shrugged, then winced as the movement pulled at her stitches. "You can imagine what happened. When my clan found out, they were furious. Orcs who consort with humans are seen as traitors. They gave me a choice: renounce him and undergo a ritual of purification, or leave and never come back. You chose to leave. I chose James, or I thought I did." Her laugh was bitter. "I went to him, told him what had happened. I thought he would be happy, thought we would build a life together. But when it was real, when I was actually standing in front of him with nothing but the clothes on my back, he panicked. Said he had never meant for things to go so far. That he had a reputation to maintain, a family who would disown him. He gave me some coins and told me to go south, to the free towns where they were more accepting of mixed company." "I am sorry," Marcus said quietly. "Do not be. I was a fool and I paid the price." She took the bowl from him and sipped the soup, her hand steadier now. "I was traveling through your village because it was on the way south. I had been walking for 3 days, sleeping rough, and I ran into a pack of wild dogs near the woods. They attacked me and I fought them off, but not before one of them got me with its teeth. I managed to make it to the road before I collapsed. It was not a blade wound." "No. Does that matter?" Marcus thought about the way the villagers had reacted, the assumptions they had made. "They thought another person had attacked you, probably assumed it was a human defending themselves from an orc raider." "Of course they did." Kira handed the empty bowl back to him. "Humans always assume the worst of my kind, just as my kind assumes the worst of yours." "Not always," Marcus said. "You trusted me. I did not have much choice, and you have proven yourself trustworthy." She looked at him, really looked at him, and he felt something shift in the air between them. "Why did you help me, Marcus, the truth this time?" He had been asking himself that question for days. "Because I know what it is like to be discarded," he said slowly. "When I came back from the war, I was different, harder. I had nightmares. I could not stand to be in crowds, and I would fly into rages over nothing. My friends stopped coming around. The girl I had been courting before I left married someone else. People looked at me like I was broken, like I was something to be pitied or feared. My father was the only one who stood by me, who helped me put myself back together. When he died, I thought about leaving, going somewhere no one knew me. But I stayed, and I built a life here, a quiet life. And maybe I helped you because I remembered what it felt like to need someone to take a chance on me. Kira was quiet for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft. Your father sounds like he was a good man. He was the best man I ever knew. He would be proud of what you did for me. Marcus felt his throat tighten. I hope so. The night they had that conversation was the night Marcus realized he was in trouble. It was not just that he found Kira attractive, though he did. There was something compelling about the way she moved, the strength in her even when she was injured, the intelligence in her amber eyes. But it was more than physical attraction. He liked talking to her. He liked her dry sense of humor, the way she challenged his assumptions, the glimpses she gave him of a culture and way of life he had never understood, and that was dangerous. She was an orc, cast out by her own people and hated by his. Even if by some miracle she felt the same way about him, there was no future in it. She would leave as soon as she was healed, heading south to those free towns she had mentioned. And he would stay here, farming his land, living his quiet life. Getting attached would only lead to pain, but knowing that did not make it any easier to guard his heart. Kira grew stronger day by day. By the end of the first week, she was able to walk from the bed to the chair, though it left her breathless and sweating. By the end of the second week, she could make it outside to the privy on her own, leaning heavily on a walking stick Marcus had carved for her. She insisted on helping with small tasks, shelling beans or peeling vegetables while he cooked, and he did not have the heart to refuse her. It was almost domestic, the two of them working side by side in the small kitchen. Marcus caught himself watching her sometimes, noticing the way her brow furrowed in concentration when she was working on something detailed, or the way she would absently rub at her healing wound when she thought he was not looking. You are staring, Kira said one afternoon without looking up from the carrots she was chopping. Sorry. Marcus turned his attention back to the bread dough he was kneading. How are you feeling today? Stronger. The pain is less. I think the stitches are ready to come out. He had been thinking the same thing. It had been nearly 3 weeks since he had sewn her up, and the wound had healed remarkably well. The flesh around the stitches had knitted together, leaving a thick pink scar that was already beginning to fade to white at the edges. I can do that tonight, he said. It should not hurt much. Good, then I can leave soon. Marcus's hands stilled in the dough. You are still planning to go south. That is what I said I would do. That is what I should do. But she did not sound certain, and she still was not looking at him. You could stay. The words were out before he could stop them, and the moment they hit the air, Marcus wanted to snatch them back, but it was too late. Kira's knife had stopped moving, and she turned to look at him with an expression he could not read. Stay, she repeated. Here, on the farm. You could. He trailed off, not sure how to finish that sentence. You could what? Help him with the farm work, live in his cottage, be with him. All of those things felt presumptuous, impossible. Marcus, I cannot stay here. Your village already hates me. If they found out I was living with you, they would drive us both out, or worse. They do not know you are here. I have been careful. No one has come by. Eventually, someone will. And when they do, when they see an orc living in your home, eating at your table, sleeping in your bed. She stopped, and color rose in her cheeks, darkening the green of her skin. They will not accept it. I do not care what they accept. You should. This is your home. These are your people. "You are my people too," Marcus said, and he meant it. "You have been living here for 3 weeks. I know you, Kira. I know that you sing to yourself when you think I am outside and cannot hear. I know you have a sweet tooth and that you always give the chickens names even though you claim not to care about them. I know you are brave and stubborn and kind, and I do not want you to leave." Kira stared at him, her eyes wide. "You do not know what you are saying." "I know exactly what I am saying." He abandoned the bread dough and crossed to her, flour still dusting his hands. "I am saying that I care about you, and I think maybe you care about me too. And I know that it is complicated and dangerous and probably stupid, but I do not want to let you walk away without telling you how I feel." She stood up, the walking stick clattering to the floor. They were close now, close enough that he could see the flecks of gold in her amber eyes, close enough to feel the heat coming off her skin. "Marcus, you do not have to say anything," he told her. "I just needed you to know. So that when you leave, you know it is not because I wanted you to go." For a moment neither of them moved. Then Kira reached up and cupped his face in her hand, her palm rough with calluses. "You are the most ridiculous human I have ever met," she said, but her voice was shaking. "Brave and foolish and so kind. Of course I care about you. How could I not after everything you have done for me? Then stay." "I want to. You have no idea how much I want to, but I am afraid of what it will cost you. Let me worry about the cost." Marcus covered her hand with his, holding it against his cheek. "Just say yes." Kira searched his face, and whatever she saw there must have convinced her because she nodded. "Yes, for now at least, I will stay." The kiss, when it came, was gentle and tentative, a question asked and answered. Her tusks were cool against his skin, and she tasted like the honey she had stolen from his pantry earlier. When they pulled apart, both of them were breathing hard, and Marcus felt like his heart might burst from his chest. "We should probably talk about what this means," Kira said, but she was smiling. "Probably. But first, let me finish making dinner. I am starving." She laughed, and the sound filled his small cottage like music. They took the stitches out that night by lamplight. Marcus used a small pair of scissors to snip each thread, then pulled it free with tweezers. Kira sat very still, watching his face as he worked. When the last stitch was removed, he sat back and admired his handiwork. The scar was long and jagged, a permanent reminder of how close she had come to dying. But she was alive and she was here, and that was all that mattered. "Thank you," Kira said softly, "for all of it, not just the healing but the kindness, the chance to rest and recover. Everything." "You do not need to thank me." "I do, though. You saved my life, Marcus, and you gave me a reason to want to live it." He took her hand, threading his fingers through hers. "So what happens now? Now we take it one day at a time, we figure out how to make this work. And we hope that the world is kinder to us than it has been so far." It was not a perfect plan, but it was enough. The summer deepened into full bloom. Marcus's crops thrived under his careful attention, and with Kira's help, he was able to keep up with the work better than he had in years. She was a quick learner, adapting to the rhythms of farm life with surprising ease. She was also incredibly strong, able to carry heavy sacks of grain or wrestle with the stubborn cow when it did not want to be milked. They were careful to keep her presence hidden. When Marcus went to the village for supplies or to sell his produce at market, Kira stayed out of sight. She would work in the back fields, the ones that could not be seen from the road, or she would stay inside with the door barred. It chafed at both of them, the secrecy and the lying, but it was necessary. One afternoon in late July, Marcus was at the market when he ran into Thomas the baker. The man looked haggard, dark circles under his eyes, and Marcus felt a pang of concern. "Are you all right?" Marcus asked. Thomas glanced around to make sure no one was listening, then leaned in close. "I have not been sleeping well. I keep thinking about that orc girl, the one who was hurt in the road. Did she die, do you think?" Marcus kept his expression neutral. "I do not know. I never saw her again after that night. I should have done more. Should have insisted Brennan help her or done something myself, but I was a coward, and now I cannot stop wondering if she is dead because of it." "You are not a coward, Thomas. You spoke up for her when no one else would." "That took courage. Not enough, though, not nearly enough." Thomas sighed and straightened up. "Anyway, how have you been? I have not seen you around much lately." "I have been busy with the farm. Lots to do this time of year. Need any help?" "My oldest daughter is looking for work, and she is a hard worker." Marcus shook his head. "I appreciate the offer, but I am managing fine on my own." That was not entirely a lie. He was managing, just not on his own. But he could not tell Thomas that, could not tell anyone. So he made his excuses and left the market, his basket full of the things he could not produce himself. Sugar and salt, lamp oil, a new whetstone for sharpening his tools. When he got home, Kira was in the garden pulling weeds. She had taken to wearing his old clothes, shirts and trousers that were too big for her but serviceable. Her hair was tied back with a strip of cloth, and there was dirt smudged on her cheek. She looked up when she heard him approach and smiled, and Marcus felt his heart do that stupid fluttering thing it did whenever she smiled at him. "How was the village?" she asked, standing and brushing dirt from her knees. "The same as always. Thomas asked about you." Her smile faded. "What did you tell him?" "That I do not know what happened to you, which is technically true. I do not know what happened to the you that was dying in the road. This you is someone different." Kira came over and took the basket from him, peering inside at the supplies. "You are getting better at lying. I'm not sure if that is a good thing. Necessary, though. Yes, necessary." She handed the basket back and looked up at the sky. "Storm coming. We should get the animals inside." They worked together to secure the farm, bringing the chickens into their coop and the cow into the small barn. By the time they were finished, the first fat drops of rain were starting to fall. They ran for the cottage, laughing as they got soaked, and tumbled inside just as the sky opened up in earnest. Marcus shook water from his hair and turned to find Kira watching him, her expression soft. "What?" "I was just thinking about how happy I am, how unexpected this all is." He crossed to her and pulled her close, careful of her still healing side. "Unexpected, but good. Very good." They kissed as the rain pounded on the roof, and for a little while the rest of the world ceased to exist. But the world has a way of intruding, no matter how hard you try to keep it at bay. It was a warm afternoon in early August when everything fell apart. Marcus was in the fields, harvesting the last of his wheat, when he heard voices coming from the direction of his cottage. Male voices, raised and angry. His blood went cold. He dropped his scythe and ran, his boots pounding on the hard, packed earth. As he got closer, he could make out words. "Told you I saw smoke coming from his chimney at odd hours. Probably nothing, but we should check." Marcus burst around the side of the cottage to find 3 men standing in his yard. Richard Moss, the blacksmith, Healer Brennan, and a man named Peter Drake, who served on the village council. They all turned to look at him, and the expressions on their faces ranged from suspicion to outright hostility. "Marcus," Richard said, "we need to talk." "About what?" Marcus's mind was racing. Where was Kira? Was she inside? Had they seen her? "About the fact that you have been acting strange for weeks, keeping to yourself, avoiding people. And now Peter says he saw someone moving around in your fields, someone too large to be you. I do not know what he is talking about. I have been alone." "Then you will not mind if we take a look around." It was not a question. Richard was already moving toward the cottage door. "You have no right," Marcus said, stepping into his path. We have every right. The village council has the authority to investigate suspicious activity, and you have been very suspicious lately. Marcus looked past Richard to Brennan, silently pleading. The old healer would not meet his eyes. Let them look, Marcus. If you have nothing to hide, it will be over quickly. There was no way out of this. If Marcus refused, they would force their way in. And if Kira was inside, they would find her anyway. All he could do was hope that she had heard them coming and had time to hide. Fine, Marcus said, stepping aside. Look all you want. Richard pushed open the door and walked inside, the other two following. Marcus brought up the rear, his heart hammering so hard he thought they must be able to hear it. The main room was empty, everything neat and normal. But there were 2 cups on the table, 2 plates drying by the basin. Richard noticed immediately. You have a guest, he said. I had a guest. He left this morning. Who? A cousin, passing through on his way to the coast. The lie came easily, surprisingly so. Richard did not look convinced. He moved to the bedroom and Marcus held his breath. The bed was made, the room tidy. But on the small table beside the bed was a comb, and caught in its teeth were a few strands of dark hair. Orc hair, coarser and thicker than human hair. Peter saw it at the same time Marcus did. He picked up the comb and held it to the light, his expression darkening. This is orc hair. That is ridiculous, Marcus said, but even he could hear how weak it sounded. Where is she? Richard demanded. Where is the orc? There is no orc. You are seeing things that are not there. Richard grabbed Marcus by the front of his shirt and shoved him against the wall. Do not lie to me, boy. We know you brought that creature here. We know you have been harboring her. Where is she? Marcus could have fought back. He was younger and faster than Richard, and he had been trained in combat, but fighting would only make things worse. She is not here. She left weeks ago, as soon as she was well enough to travel. He is telling the truth about that much, at least, came a voice from the doorway. They all turned to see Kira standing there, framed by the afternoon sunlight. She had been outside, Marcus realized, probably in the barn. She must have heard the commotion and come to see what was happening. She looked magnificent and terrifying, her shoulders squared and her chin raised. The scar on her side was visible where her shirt had ridden up, a testament to what she had survived. In her hand, she held a pitchfork, not in a threatening way, but as if she had simply been working and had not thought to put it down. She did leave, Kira continued, but then she came back. Because this is where she wants to be. Richard released Marcus and turned to face Kira, his face red with rage. You dare show yourself in broad daylight. You dare speak as if you have any right to be here. I have as much right as anyone. Marcus saved my life and gave me a home. I will not apologize for that. Marcus is a fool who does not understand what you are. You are a monster, an animal. Your kind kills humans for sport. And your kind lets innocent people bleed to death in the street, Kira shot back. Do not talk to me about monsters. Peter stepped forward, his hand on the cudgel at his belt. You need to come with us. The council will decide what to do with you. I am not going anywhere. You do not have a choice. Marcus pushed past Richard and positioned himself between Kira and the 3 men. She is not going anywhere, and neither am I. This is my property and you are trespassing. Get out. Stand aside, Marcus, Brennan said quietly. You have already thrown your life away for this creature. Do not make it worse. She is not a creature. Her name is Kira, and she is worth 10 of any of you. Richard laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. You have lost your mind. Fine. If you want to cast your lot with the orcs, then you can share her fate. Consider yourself banished from the village. You are not welcome in our shops, our market, our homes. And if we catch either of you on our land, we will treat you as the enemies you are. This is my land, Marcus said through gritted teeth, and I am not leaving it. Then you will die on it. Richard turned and stalked out, Peter following close behind. Brennan lingered for a moment, looking at Marcus with something that might have been pity. "I am sorry it came to this," the old healer said. "I truly am." "No, you are not," Marcus said. "You are sorry you have to live with the consequences of your cowardice. But you made your choice and I made mine. Now get out of my home." Brennan left without another word. When they were alone, Marcus turned to Kira and found her shaking, the pitchfork trembling in her grip. He took it from her gently and set it aside, then pulled her into his arms. "I am sorry," she whispered against his chest. "I should have stayed hidden. I made everything worse." "You did not make anything worse. They would have found out eventually. At least now we do not have to hide. But they banished you. Your own people, your own village, and it is my fault." Marcus pulled back enough to look her in the eyes. "Listen to me. What they did is not your fault. It is their choice, their prejudice. And as for being banished, I do not care. I have everything I need right here. What if they come back? What if they try to hurt you? Then we will deal with it, together." Kira searched his face, and whatever she saw there seemed to calm her. She nodded and leaned her forehead against his. Together. The next few weeks were tense. Marcus stopped going to the village entirely, relying on the supplies he had stockpiled and what he could produce on the farm. He had expected retaliation, some kind of attack or sabotage, but it never came. The villagers simply ignored him, acting as if he and Kira did not exist. In some ways, the isolation was a relief. They no longer had to hide, no longer had to watch every word and action. Kira could work openly in the fields, could sit with Marcus on the porch in the evenings and watch the sun set. They fell into an easy partnership, dividing the work according to their strengths and abilities. But Marcus could not shake the feeling that the other shoe was about to drop. The village silence felt ominous, like the calm before a storm. The storm came in September, when the first frost touched the fields. Marcus was repairing a section of fence when he saw a group of people approaching along the road. At first, he thought it was another delegation from the village, come to harass them. But as they got closer, he realized these were not villagers. They were orcs. There were 5 of them, all male, all heavily armed. They moved with the fluid grace of trained warriors, and their eyes scanned the farmstead with the wariness of people expecting trouble. Marcus set down his hammer and called for Kira. She came out of the cottage, took one look at the approaching orcs, and went very still. "That is my brother," she said quietly, "the tall one in front. Is that good or bad? I do not know yet." They walked together to meet the orcs at the edge of the property. Up close, Marcus could see the family resemblance between Kira and the leader. They had the same amber eyes, the same sharp cheekbones. But where Kira's expression was guarded, her brother's was openly hostile. "Kira," he said, his voice deep and rough, "you are alive." "No thanks to you, Thorn. What are you doing here? I came to bring you home. The elders have agreed to let you return to the clan, provided you renounce your association with humans and undergo the purification rites." "I told you before I am not renouncing anything, and I am not coming back." Thorn's gaze flicked to Marcus, cold and assessing. "Is this the human, the one you have been living with? His name is Marcus, and yes, he is the one who saved my life when your clan left me to die." "We did not leave you to die. We gave you a choice and you made it. You gave me an impossible choice and you knew it, but I do not regret the decision I made. I have a life here, Thorn, a good life, and I am not giving it up." One of the other orcs, a scarred warrior with a missing tusk, stepped forward. "The human has poisoned your mind. This is not a life. You are living like an animal, working in the dirt, sleeping under a human's roof. You are a warrior of the Red Stone clan. You deserve better." "I am happy," Kira said simply. "Can you say the same?" Thorn's expression flickered, something that might have been pain crossing his features. Happiness is not the point. Duty is. Honor is. You owe it to the clan to come home. I owe the clan nothing. They made that clear when they cast me out. Kira, please. Mother is sick. She has been asking for you. That hit home. Marcus saw Kira waver, saw the conflict on her face. How sick? Very. The healers say she may not last the winter. Kira closed her eyes and Marcus saw her hands clench into fists. That is not fair, Thorn. Life is not fair, but you still have a chance to see her, to say goodbye if you come with us now. And if I do not, then you are dead to us, truly and completely, no second chances. Marcus wanted to speak, to tell Thorn to leave and take his ultimatums with him. But this was not his choice to make. This was Kira's family, her past. All he could do was stand beside her and support whatever decision she made. Kira opened her eyes and looked at Marcus. He saw the question there, the silent plea for guidance. He took her hand and squeezed it. Whatever you decide, I will support you, he said quietly. If you need to go see your mother, I understand, and if you want to stay, I will be here. She squeezed his hand back, then turned to face her brother. I will go see Mother, but I am not staying and I am not undergoing any purification rites. This is a visit, nothing more, and Marcus comes with me. Thorn's face darkened. That is not acceptable. Then neither is your offer. Those are my terms, Thorn. Take them or leave them. The orcs conferred among themselves in their own language, harsh and guttural. Marcus could not understand the words, but he could read the body language. They were not happy. Finally, Thorn turned back to them. The human can come. But if he causes any trouble, if he shows any disrespect, we will kill him. Do you understand? I understand, Marcus said before Kira could respond. And I will be on my best behavior. You had better be. They left the next morning after securing the farm as best they could. Marcus left a note for Thomas, explaining where they had gone in case anyone came looking. He did not expect anyone to care, but it felt wrong to just disappear without a word. The journey to the Red Stone clan's territory took 3 days. They traveled through dense forest, following trails that Marcus would never have found on his own. The orcs moved quickly, covering ground at a pace that left him winded. Kira stayed close to his side, pointing out obstacles and helping him navigate the rough terrain. At night, they camped in clearings, the orcs building fires and cooking the game they had caught during the day. Marcus was offered food but not conversation. The warriors watched him with suspicion and barely concealed contempt, and he had the sense that if Kira were not there, they would have killed him already. On the 3rd evening, they reached the clan settlement. It was larger than Marcus had expected, a collection of sturdy wooden buildings arranged around a central longhouse. Orcs of all ages moved about, going about their daily business, and they stopped to stare as the group passed. Marcus felt their eyes on him, felt their hostility like a physical weight. Thorn led them to a smaller building on the edge of the settlement. Mother is inside. You can see her, but make it quick. The elders want to speak with you. Kira nodded and took Marcus's hand, pulling him toward the door. Inside, the building was dim and warm, heated by a fire in the center of the room. On a pallet in the corner lay an old orc woman, her green skin faded to a sickly gray. Her eyes were closed, her breathing labored. Mother, Kira whispered, kneeling beside the pallet. It is me. I am here. The old woman's eyes fluttered open, and when she saw Kira, her face lit up with joy and relief. My daughter, I thought I would die without seeing you again. I am sorry it took so long. I did not know you were sick. It does not matter. You are here now. The old woman's gaze shifted to Marcus, and her expression grew wary. Is this the human? Yes. His name is Marcus. He saved my life, Mother. Did he? The old woman studied Marcus with sharp, intelligent eyes. Come closer, human. Let me look at you. Marcus approached the pallet and knelt beside Kira. "It is an honor to meet you, madam. Do not patronize me, boy. I am dying, not stupid." But there was no real anger in her voice, only exhaustion. "You care for my daughter." "I do, very much. And you understand what it means to be with her." "The danger, the isolation." "I do, and I do not care. She is worth it." The old woman laughed, a dry, rasping sound. "You are either very brave or very foolish, possibly both." She turned back to Kira and took her hand. "Are you happy with him?" "Yes, mother, happier than I have ever been." "Then that is all that matters. Do not let the clan bully you into giving him up. Life is too short to live for anyone but yourself." "I will not. I promise." They stayed with her for an hour, talking quietly. Marcus learned that Kira's mother had been a warrior in her youth, had fought in the border wars and earned great respect. She had raised Kira and Thorn alone after their father was killed in battle, and she had always encouraged them to think for themselves, even when it put them at odds with the clan. When it was time to leave, the old woman pulled Kira close and whispered something in her ear. Marcus could not hear the words, but he saw tears streaming down Kira's face. Then the old woman released her and waved them away. "Go. The elders are waiting, and they do not like to be kept waiting." The meeting with the elders was held in the longhouse, a massive structure with a high ceiling and walls covered in carved totems. There were 7 of them, all old and grim-faced, seated on a raised platform at the far end. Kira and Marcus stood before them, surrounded by warriors, and Marcus had never felt more like a prisoner. The eldest of the elders, a woman with white hair and scars covering half her face, spoke first. "Kira of the Red Stone clan, you were cast out for consorting with a human. You chose exile over loyalty to your people, and yet you have the audacity to return, bringing the human with you. Explain yourself." Kira lifted her chin. "I came to see my mother, as was my right, and I brought Marcus because he is my partner. Where I go, he goes." "Partner," the elder repeated, her lip curling. "You mean mate? If you prefer that word, yes." A ripple of shock and disgust went through the assembled orcs. One of the other elders, a man with a missing eye, leaned forward. "You have violated the most sacred laws of our people. Mating with a human is forbidden. The offspring of such unions are abominations." "We have no offspring," Kira said. "And even if we did, they would not be abominations. They would be children, innocent and deserving of love." "You are deluded," the scarred elder said. "The human has twisted your mind, made you forget who you are. But it is not too late. Renounce him now, undergo the purification, and you can stay." "Your mother would want that." "My mother told me to be happy, and I am happy with Marcus. So no, I will not renounce him. I will not stay. I came to say goodbye to her, and now I have. There is nothing left for me here." The elders conferred among themselves, their voices low and angry. Finally, the scarred elder stood. "Very well. You have made your choice, and we have made ours. You are no longer of the Red Stone clan. Your name will be struck from our records, your deeds forgotten, and if you ever set foot on our lands again, you will be killed on sight. Do you understand?" "I understand." "And you, human?" The elder's gaze fixed on Marcus. "You have stolen one of our daughters, turned her against her own kind. If we were a more vengeful people, we would kill you now. But Kira's mother has asked that we spare you, and we will honor her final wishes. Leave now, and never return." Marcus nodded, not trusting himself to speak. He could feel the rage and grief radiating off Kira, and all he wanted was to get her out of here, away from these people who claimed to care about her, but only on their own terms. They were escorted to the edge of the settlement and released. Thorn was waiting there, his expression unreadable. "I am sorry," he said to Kira. "I wish things could be different." "You could make them different," Kira said. "You are a warrior, Thorn. You could stand up to the elders, could argue for change, and accomplish nothing except my own exile. The elders are set in their ways. They will not change, not for you, not for anyone. Then I feel sorry for you. You are going to spend your whole life serving people who care more about tradition than about the well-being of their own. Thorne flinched as if she had struck him. Goodbye, Kira. I hope you find what you are looking for. I already have. They walked back through the forest in silence, just the two of them. Marcus could see that Kira was struggling, her jaw clenched and her eyes bright with unshed tears. He did not try to talk to her, did not try to comfort her. He just stayed close, a steady presence. When they finally stopped to rest, Kira broke down. She sobbed like her heart was breaking, and Marcus held her through it, his own tears falling into her hair. He hated the elders for their cruelty, hated the clan for rejecting her, hated the world for being so small-minded and cruel. But most of all, he hated that there was nothing he could do to fix it. I am sorry, he whispered. I am so sorry. It is not your fault, Kira managed between sobs. You did nothing wrong. None of this is your fault. I know, but I wish I could make it better. You do. Just by being here, you make it better. They held each other until the tears stopped, until Kira's breathing evened out and the terrible shaking subsided. Then they continued walking, hand in hand, heading back to the place they had built together. The farm looked exactly as they had left it, peaceful and serene in the golden light of the setting sun. Marcus felt a wave of relief wash over him. This was home. Not the village that had rejected him, not the clan that had cast Kira out, but this small plot of land and the life they had made here. We are going to be all right, Kira said, as if reading his thoughts. Are we not? Yes, we are going to be more than all right. Over the next few months, they settled into their new reality. The village continued to ignore them, which was fine by Marcus. He made a trip to a town 2 days' ride away and sold his surplus crops there, establishing new trade relationships. It was inconvenient, but it worked. And the people in that town did not seem to care that he was living with an orc. They cared about the quality of his vegetables and whether he could deliver on time. Kira threw herself into improving the farm. She built a new chicken coop, twice the size of the old one, and constructed raised beds for the garden. She learned to cook, experimenting with recipes and occasionally producing something inedible, but more often creating meals that were surprisingly delicious. She sang while she worked, old orc songs that Marcus did not understand but loved anyway. In the evenings, they would sit by the fire and talk about the future. They talked about expanding the farm, maybe getting some pigs or goats. They talked about building a larger house, one with a real bedroom and maybe even a second room for guests or, someday, children. They talked about traveling, seeing the free towns in the south that Kira had once planned to visit. It was on one of those evenings, with winter settling in and snow beginning to fall, that Marcus realized he wanted to marry her. Not because it was expected or because they needed to formalize their relationship in the eyes of any community, but because he wanted to make a promise to her. A promise that he would be by her side for the rest of his life, through whatever came. He brought it up carefully, not sure how orcs viewed marriage. Kira, can I ask you something? Of course. Do orcs have marriage, like humans do? She looked up from the sock she was mending, her expression curious. We have bonding ceremonies. When two orcs decide to commit to each other, they exchange vows in front of the clan and are considered mated for life. Why do you ask? Marcus took a deep breath. Because I want to marry you. Or bond with you, or whatever we want to call it. I want to stand up and promise that I am yours and you are mine, for as long as we both live. Kira set down her mending, her eyes wide. You want to marry me? Yes. I know we do not have a clan to witness it, and we do not have a village that will celebrate with us. But I do not care about that. I care about you, and I want you to know that this is forever for me. You are forever for me." She was quiet for a long moment, and Marcus started to worry that he had misread things, that she did not feel the same way. But then she smiled, and it was like the sun coming out from behind clouds. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I will marry you." They decided to hold the ceremony in the spring, when the farm would be at its most beautiful. In the meantime, they prepared. Marcus carved a set of matching rings from a piece of oak wood, simple bands that fit perfectly on their fingers. Kira made them new clothes, stitching with painstaking care. They planned the vows they would say, blending human and orc traditions into something that was uniquely theirs. When spring finally arrived, they held the ceremony at dawn, with only the trees and the birds as witnesses. They stood in the garden, surrounded by the first green shoots of the season, and spoke their promises to each other. Marcus promised to stand by her, to protect her, to love her through all the challenges they would face. Kira promised the same, her voice strong and clear. When they exchanged rings and kissed to seal the bond, Marcus felt something settle deep in his chest. A sense of rightness, of completeness. They were married now, bound together by choice and love. Nothing else mattered. Life continued, and with it came both joys and challenges. There was a late frost that killed half their seedlings, and they had to replant. There was a summer so dry that Marcus spent hours every day hauling water from the well to keep the crops alive. There was a winter storm that damaged the barn roof, and they spent 3 days in freezing temperatures making repairs. But there were also moments of perfect happiness. The first time they harvested honey from the beehives Kira had built. The evening they watched a meteor shower from the porch, wrapped in blankets and each other's arms. The morning Marcus woke to find Kira staring at him, a soft smile on her face, and when he asked what she was thinking, she said, "Just that I love you. And I am grateful for every day we have together." One afternoon in late summer, nearly 2 years after Marcus had first pulled Kira from the road, they had a visitor. Marcus was in the fields when he saw a figure approaching, and his first instinct was to call for Kira. But as the figure got closer, he recognized Thomas the baker. Thomas stopped at the edge of the property, looking uncertain. "Marcus, may I speak with you?" Marcus wiped the sweat from his forehead and walked over. "What do you want, Thomas?" I wanted to apologize. For that night, when the orc woman was dying in the road, I should have done more. I should have stood up to Richard and the others. And I wanted you to know that not everyone in the village agrees with what they did to you. Some of us think you were right to help her. And we are sorry you have been treated so poorly. Marcus studied the other man's face, looking for signs of deception or ulterior motive, but Thomas just looked tired and sincere. "I appreciate that, Thomas, but it is a little late for apologies. I know, and I do not expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that there are people who respect what you did. And if you ever need anything, if there is ever a way we can help, you just have to ask." Before Marcus could respond, Kira emerged from the cottage. She had been inside baking bread, and there was flour dusting her arms. She took one look at Thomas and her expression hardened. "You are the one who spoke up that night," she said. "The one who tried to get the healer to help me." Thomas nodded, his gaze dropping. "I did not try hard enough." "No, you did not, but you tried, which is more than anyone else did." "So thank you for that." Thomas looked up, surprised. "You remember?" "I remember everything from that night. The pain, the fear, the certainty that I was going to die surrounded by people who hated me. And I remember your voice asking for help. So yes, I remember. I am glad you survived. And I am glad you found happiness here with Marcus. You deserve it." They talked for a while longer, and by the time Thomas left, Marcus felt something shift. It was not forgiveness exactly, and it was not a return to the way things had been. But it was a start. A recognition that not everyone was an enemy, that some people were capable of growth and change. Over the following months, others from the village began to reach out. Some just to apologize, others to offer trade or assistance. Marcus and Kira were cautious, but they were also willing to give people a second chance. Slowly, carefully, they began to rebuild bridges. Richard the blacksmith never apologized, and neither did most of the village council. But their influence waned as more people began to question the old prejudices. When Healer Brennan died of a heart attack, it was Kira who the villagers turned to for help, remembering the medicinal herbs she had been growing and the remedies she had learned from her mother. She was hesitant at first, but Marcus encouraged her. "You have the knowledge and the skill," he said, "and people need help. You do not have to forgive them, but you can choose to be the bigger person." So Kira began to treat the sick and injured, and she was good at it. People came from the village and from neighboring farms, seeking her help. And slowly, grudgingly, they began to see her not as a monster but as a person. Someone who cared, who worked hard, who laughed and cried and loved just like they did. 5 years after Marcus had pulled Kira from the road, the village held a harvest festival. For the first time in all those years, Marcus and Kira were invited. They debated whether to go, whether it was worth the risk of reopening old wounds. But in the end, they decided to try. The festival was held in the village square, with long tables laden with food and musicians playing cheerful tunes. When Marcus and Kira arrived, there was a moment of awkward silence as everyone turned to look at them. But then Thomas stepped forward, a smile on his face, and welcomed them. Others followed his lead, offering greetings and invitations to sit. It was not perfect. There were still people who glared at them, who muttered under their breath. But there were also people who shook their hands, who thanked Kira for healing their children or their elderly parents. There were children who stared at Kira with wide-eyed curiosity, asking innocent questions about her tusks and her green skin. And there was laughter, genuine and warm, when Marcus told a story about the time Kira had tried to milk the cow and ended up getting kicked into a mud puddle. As the sun set and the lanterns were lit, Marcus found himself standing at the edge of the square with Kira, watching people dance and celebrate. "What do you think?" he asked. "Was it worth coming?" Kira leaned her head on his shoulder. "Yes, I think it was. It is not perfect, and it probably never will be, but it is better than it was, and sometimes better is enough." "I love you," Marcus said, "not for the first time and not for the last. I love you too." They stayed at the festival until late, then walked home under a sky full of stars. The farm was waiting for them, as it always was. Their home, their sanctuary, the place they had built together from nothing. As they crossed the threshold, Marcus thought about everything that had led them here. The pain and the fear, the rejection and the struggle. But also the love, the hope, the quiet moments of joy that made it all worthwhile. Kira closed the door behind them and turned to face him, her amber eyes warm in the lamplight. "What are you thinking about?" "Just how lucky I am, to have found you, to have this life with you." "I am the lucky one," Kira said, crossing to him and taking his hands. "You gave me everything, Marcus. A home, a purpose, a reason to keep fighting. I would be dead without you. And I would be half alive without you, so I guess we are even." They kissed, slow and sweet, and for a moment the rest of the world fell away. There was just the two of them, bound together by choice and love and the promise they had made to each other. The years continued to pass, bringing with them new challenges and new joys. There were hard winters and droughts, illnesses and injuries, arguments and reconciliations. But through it all, Marcus and Kira stood together. They built a life that was rich and full, not in spite of the obstacles they faced, but because of them. They never had children of their own, though they talked about it sometimes. In the end, they decided that the family they had built, the community they were slowly becoming a part of, was enough. They took in stray animals, nursed injured wildlife back to health, and mentored young people from the village who wanted to learn about farming or healing. On their 10th anniversary, they stood in the same spot where they had married, surrounded by the garden that had grown wild and beautiful over the years. Kira's hair was starting to show streaks of silver, and Marcus's face was lined with the evidence of years spent working in the sun. But when they looked at each other, they saw the same people who had stood here a decade ago, making promises they had kept. "You regret it?" Marcus asked. "Choosing this life, choosing me?" Kira laughed, the sound bright and joyous. "Not for a single moment." "You are the best thing that ever happened to me, Marcus Dawson, and I would choose you again, 1,000 times over." "Good, because you are stuck with me. I can think of worse fates." They renewed their vows that day, speaking the same words they had spoken 10 years before. And when they kissed to seal the bond once more, Marcus felt the same sense of rightness, of completeness. This was where he belonged. This was home. As the sun set on their anniversary, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, Marcus and Kira sat on the porch and watched the world turn. They did not need to speak. After 10 years together, they could communicate in silences and shared glances, in the way their hands found each other without conscious thought. The farm stretched out before them, a testament to everything they had built. The fields were lush and green, the animals healthy and content. The cottage had been expanded twice, with a new bedroom and a workshop where Kira prepared her medicines. It was not grand or impressive, but it was theirs. Every inch of it had been earned through hard work and dedication, through love and perseverance. In the distance, they could see lights from the village beginning to glow as evening fell. The village that had once rejected them was now a place where they were welcomed, where their contributions were valued. It had taken years, but things had changed. Not completely and not for everyone, but enough. Marcus thought about that night 10 years ago when he had seen Kira bleeding out in the road and made the split-second decision to help her. He had not known then what it would cost him, what he would have to give up. But he also had not known what he would gain, the love of an extraordinary woman. A partnership built on mutual respect and trust, a life that was challenging and complicated and absolutely perfect in its imperfection. "What are you thinking about?" Kira asked, her voice soft in the gathering darkness. "Just that I would do it all again. Every hard moment, every sacrifice. All of it was worth it to have this, to have you." Kira turned to look at him, and in her eyes he saw the reflection of his own feelings. Love and gratitude and a bone-deep contentment that came from knowing you were exactly where you were supposed to be. "Me too," she said simply. They sat together as the stars began to appear, one by one, in the darkening sky. And in that moment, Marcus felt a sense of peace so profound it nearly took his breath away. The healer had refused and the crowd had watched, and Marcus had pushed through to treat Kira himself. That single act of compassion had changed the course of both their lives, had brought them to this moment. He had saved her life that night. But in doing so, she had saved his too. She had given him purpose and joy, had shown him that love could exist even in the face of hatred and fear. She had made him better, braver, more complete. As they sat together in the peaceful evening, Marcus knew that whatever the future held, they would face it together. They had weathered every storm, overcome every obstacle, and they would continue to do so for as long as they both lived. Because that was what love was. Not the grand gestures or the perfect moments, but the choice to stand together day after day, through the mundane and the magnificent. It was the willingness to fight for each other, to sacrifice for each other, to build a life together even when the world said it was impossible. Marcus took Kira's hand and raised it to his lips, pressing a gentle kiss to her knuckles. She smiled, that familiar smile that still made his heart skip a beat, and leaned into him. The night deepened around them, but they remained on the porch, comfortable in the silence and in each other's presence. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new work to be done. But tonight, they simply existed together, two souls who had found each other against all odds and refused to let go. And as the moon rose over their farm, casting everything in silver light, Marcus thought about how one moment of courage, one decision to help someone in need, had given him everything he had ever wanted. A home, a purpose, a love that would last the rest of his days. Kira shifted beside him and he wrapped his arm around her shoulders, pulling her close. She fit perfectly against him, as she always had, as she always would. "I love you," he whispered into her hair. "I love you too," she whispered back. And in the quiet of their farm, surrounded by the life they had built together, Marcus and Kira found their happily ever after. Not perfect, not without scars, but absolutely and completely theirs. The story of the healer who refused and the farmer who pushed through to treat the orc himself had a happy ending after all. Because sometimes the bravest thing you can do is extend kindness to someone the world has deemed unworthy of it. And sometimes that kindness changes everything.